Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 2, Episode 16. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
Steve, I've known you for a while, but one thing I don't know about you, do you collect stuff? Do you prowl the neighborhoods with you virtually or drive looking for that antique, that collectible thing, that last Jedi Knight to your Star Wars collection? Are you a hobbyist of any kind?
You know, not really. I think probably because I've got too much junk, which may tie into this episode a little bit. Yeah. Too much stuff I need to get out. I'm hesitant to bring too many new things in, and when I do, I'm pretty picky. But I have been exploring some of these resale sites, and there's quite a lot of interesting stuff. So maybe that'll change. Well, this whole idea of pre-loved fashion, and it goes from like cheap and cheerful all the way to the exclusive. It's really interesting to me because and this whole idea of recommerce, I guess we could call it, or resale, is just really, the numbers that I've been hearing in the market are just huge. Like, it seems to be really catching on. Yeah, I think it's a great example of how technology, just kind of like Uber or Airbnb, brings the two sides of the market together. We've seen kind of the same thing here. There's a lot of product out there that has been loved and may need to find a different home, and that facilitates, as we'll hear from Sarah, the sale of additional products. So yeah, it's really fascinating, and of course, I think all this interest in sustainability has driven a lot of activity.
Yeah, it feels like that puts topspin on it. And now you've got the brands involved, because I was always wondering how the brands felt about this. But you've got Lululemon, you got Nike, they're all kind of jumping on the trend in one way or another. And I guess, as you said, was the big headwind COVID, and is the big tailwind just the mega trend of sustainability amongst younger shoppers? Well, I think that the hesitancy, in my experience with a lot of the big brands, is competing with themselves, right? Like, why would you sell a used item when you can sell a new item? But I think as the market matures and you really dig into it, you realize that, well, you may just be losing share to other people that have a better mousetrap, or it's actually incremental. So I'm sure there's a lot still to play out here. But I think that's part of what's driving it. And you just can't ignore a customer's interest in recycling product. Well, it's funny, right? Because it's almost like buying a car now. You're thinking about both the resale value, you're thinking about the automobile, and the used car market's a whole thing in and of itself. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised. And we have an amazing guest to start to unpack, so to speak, all of this for us. Yeah, we've got Sarah Davis, who's the founder and chief customer officer of Fashionphile, and they are the largest ultra-luxury handbag and accessory reseller in the United States. And they have some big brands behind them. In particular, in April 2019, they took the first round of investment and partnered up with my former employer, the Neiman Marcus Group. So let's bring Sarah on and learn all about it. Well, welcome, Sarah. We're delighted to have you on the Remarkable Retail Podcast. Maybe we could just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself, your professional journey, and how you came to start Fashionphile way back in 1999.
So long ago. Yes, I know. It's interesting because we have a lot of people who come to us now from, startups that have been around a couple years. And I always joke that we've had a very, very long start to our startup. But yeah, I started selling on eBay back in 1999. And that was prior to like PayPal. And so those early days that, where I would wait for your check to arrive in the mail and then you wait for the check to clear. Do you remember those days?
Oh, yeah.
eBay back then, but eBay in the early days, there was no online payment system of any type. And so that's how it worked. And I also took photographs with a 35 millimeter camera, as everybody did. And then you developed your film at CVS and then you put it up on a photo host. So again, it's crazy that so many iterations doing this a very, very long time. But I was in law school at the time and was looking for a way to make some money and started selling my own stuff. And then I had friends and family were like, hey, can you sell my stuff too? And it grew from there, really. So that was those early days. And graduated from law school, passed the bar. And then my husband's like, what the heck? Never got a job in the industry at all because I fell in love with really with what I was doing. And I grew up, just kind of solidly middle class, but in a household where if I wanted to buy nice jeans, then I had to buy them myself. And I always wanted nice jeans or nice stuff. I always wanted stuff that was nicer than I could afford. And so I always would shop consignment stores, thrift stores or whatever, because I found I could buy things that that were outside of normally what I could afford, but I could afford them if they were used. So I started selling on eBay back in those days, and it was just a really great home for someone like me who was always looking for a bargain and wanting to find a deal on it, something designer, and then also had stuff to sell that I wanted to get rid of that had value. And I found that it was back in those early days, eBay was more like Facebook Marketplace today, or, right. Craigslist or something. There's hardly any regulations, or it wasn't a very safe place to be selling designer goods. And so I tried to create a safe little corner of eBay and found that was fairly easy because there was nobody really doing it. And so was able to develop a little following on eBay, which helped me to develop a following as I got off eBay. We opened our website in 2007. We opened actually our first location, our first brick and mortar in 2007 in Beverly Hills. And then we opened our second physical location in 2009 in San Francisco, and then 2012 in North County, San Diego, and then in Manhattan in 2018. And we're bootstrapped until 2019. So, I started it was 20 years.
Right.
And bootstrapped. And then because we were growing 50% a year over year, and we were profitable the whole time. And so kind of thought, why raise money? We were doing this alone. But we got to a point when we realized there were so many competitors who really just had so much money to compete against us, really, in awareness. And so we just figured if we wanted to really get in the game, grow the technology we were developing, get a team on board who could help us get there and really, get some awareness, we were going to need to raise some money. So went out for a traditional fundraising round, and the end of that round, we ended up with Neiman Marcus as our first investor. So that was really exciting. I think truly revolutionary, move on Neiman Marcus's part. It was a, real honor and shocker to us. We weren't even expecting that as we went into it. We're looking for a traditional private equity type investor, and they've been an amazing partner to us. And anyway, so we've just been growing really, quickly. Again, still year over year, 50% growth. And then also, have had still profitable. So that's kind of the most unique part of what we do, is that we've always been profitable.
I was going to say, not everybody can say that.
Everybody's so shocked when we tell them that, because we have been mainly direct to consumer on the sales side, but we've had these locations all the while where they're convenient locations for you to come in and transact with us. And we're able to write checks there, accept your returns, do lots of different activities in these physical locations. We're in 5 Neiman Marcus stores right now, but we're in the process of opening 5 more by the end of summer. And then we'll have 10 more by next February. So 15 by February. So it's very exciting, kind of that interaction we've had with Neiman along the way too. So it's kind of how from there to here.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I imagine we've got some listeners who completely understand or largely understand the resale, or I don't know if you like the term recommerce market, sure. But for folks who don't, can you just give us a sense, kind of big picture of what the market is about, but in particular, how Fashionphile is positioned and differentiated from maybe some of the bigger, more mass players?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so kind of like I said, the thing that I find exciting about resale or recommerce, like you're talking about, is that this isn't like a kind of sexy new way to sell something online. Like, you might learn about like flash sales, or, something that's like a new shiny penny in the way that you sell online. It's not that. What it is it's something that we've been doing for literally hundreds of years in resale, meaning my grandma, shopped consignment, and that people will buy things that have value and want to be able to sell those things. And so what we are doing today is adding, technology that helps us to scale to a point that we've never had before. And so it's just really exciting what you're seeing in recommerce in every different capacity. Like I said, I got into this because I love getting a deal. And I love, especially in the pre-owned world, I just find that that's the way that I can get the best kind of able to get the best products for kind of already driven off the lot, so to speak. So we shop in our house every one of our competitors, not as a trial to test their services, but because I love it. So we buy, from my son is in a band and buys instruments and sells instruments on Reverb. They sell musical instruments or StockX for sneakers, and you think they only have like sneakers that are like multiples of retail, but they don't. They have stuff that's under retail as well. So there's obviously ThredUp. I love shoving all my clothes into a ThredUp bag, sending it off. They give me a few bucks for it. I'm stoked to get it out of my house. And then my kids, love to use that credit to be able to buy on more on ThredUp. And all of my daughter's Doc Martens came from the RealReal, and so it's very exciting. What it is people taking old school resale that used to be in a, kind of just siloed off in little mom and pop consignment shops, or even in pawn shops. That's how it used to buy a used guitar, is you go to a pawn shop. And now it's just, there's just a lot of order and scale that's really exciting that you see in recommerce.
It's so exciting to listen to. And what intrigues me, as you said, exactly, it's been around a long, long time. So what is it that's driving, I think, the growth? I perceive a lot of growth in the category, certainly looking at the numbers and looking at what you've been talking about. And is it the fact that technology has removed the friction, like payment and validation, and or is there something deeper going on? Is there some ethos? Is something millennials driven that they really see that it's a win-win? They have both economics and economic responsibility and responsibility to not, continue to make more and buy more new stuff. What's driving all this? It's really kind of a perfect storm of a lot of things, I think. I joke that, we've been doing this for so long, bootstrapped for so long, and really we're around for like 14 years before we even had some competitors getting into the market. Mm-hmm. It was like eBay, your mom and pop consignment shop or pawn shop, and then Fashionphile for a very long time. And then now there are so many really amazing, stable, successful resale companies in lots of different areas of the, kind of for every type of product. And so, one thing I'm really grateful to all of them for, including our direct competitors, is them spending hundreds of millions of dollars of money that they've raised on awareness building that really brought awareness to the category that you could buy an authentic Chanel bag online. And as more awareness came into the category, it benefited Fashionphile, even as we weren't participating in that type of awareness building. So just awareness to the category, awareness to the fact that people are shocked, like, you can buy authentic, like that this is something that is possible. These are reliable, authentic products. Like that type of awareness has been really helpful, because there's been a lot of suspicion and for good reason about the kind of authentication practices. But the fact that there's large, reliable companies that aren't going anywhere that you can transact with, that have return policies, and that are running honest businesses, that awareness has been very helpful. Like you said, the younger customer who not only wants a deal, but actually cares about sustainability issues and is really interested in that part of the piece of the story. The fact that these, that when the thing that I love about what we do in resale and the sustainability story is sometimes, when you talk about something sustainable, it's kind of a lesser experience, but it's the right thing to do, like a plastic straw where you're like, oh my gosh, a piece of straw is a worse experience. But using a piece of pasta, I'm going to use a piece of pasta, but I feel good about it.
It's like, I know it's the right thing to do, use the paper straw, but it's not as good of an experience as a big fat McDonald's straw. It just does the job, like plastic. Yeah. But I love there's certain areas in sustainability, like if you look at, electric vehicles, like it used to be an electric vehicle was like the same thing. It's like, they're not the cars aren't fun to drive. They're not cute or they're cool at all, but it's kind of the right thing to do. And they don't have any get up and go, but whatever. And now you get a Tesla that people are driving, it happens to be sustainable, but it's also just like super fast, super sexy. It's a better experience in lots of ways or whatever, arguably. And I feel like that's in resale. I love that like what we do is the sustainable thing to do, but it's also the best experience. You're also buying a Chanel bag at less than retail, which you can't do in any type of traditional, retail environment that's outside of resale. And so because Chanel doesn't have sales. And
Right.
so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you're going to have this Chanel bag, which we just did this big sustainability study that we released at Earth Day. And people who spend a lot of money on handbags, which it's like, do you really need to study to find this out? But expect to hold them longer, take care of them better, and are more likely to get professional repairs. And so you've got a bag that someone had for 10 years, carried quite a bit, and now is, we're able to take that item and sell it again to another person who's going to carry for another 10 years, who's also going to care for it. And it just really extends that life cycle. And so it's really just like win-win, win-win-win, as far as that, that kind of idea that it's sustainable. And so, and so I feel like all of these things, that awareness, the sustainability story that everyone is so excited about, millennials are really kind of jumping in on it and saying, you know what, I'd rather have one, pre-owned Chanel bag than buy 12 of these other, kind of like more fast fashion brand bags or whatever. Just lots of those things all kind of simultaneously happening at once has kind of gotten us to where we are today. Obviously, the awareness of all these recommerce brands going public and those stories. And so,
I mean, it's not like the brands though would stand up and say, I'm a big fan of unbridled consumer consumption. How do they, how do these brands who build an exclusivity, a uniqueness, how do they feel about this whole trend wrapped around their product?
Well, as I'm sure they've been very slow to be friendly. I mean, it's super interesting because, probably 10 years ago, the only interactions we had with brands were like in cease and desist letters.
Right.
And now in the past couple of years, we've been able to engage in conversations with most of the big brands that we sell and many of the small ones. And they're not adversarial. They are saying, we understand that our customers are now thinking more about the purchases they make. When you spend, a Chanel flap is a $7,200 purchase. People are making that purchase thinking about the investment quality of that purchase. And in fact, kind of like you buy a car and you say, which one has the better resale value? That is a question people are 100% having when they're thinking about purchasing these luxury accessories. Men have actually thought that along those lines in their watch purchases for a long time.
Yeah.
And more women are coming into these, making substantial purchases and thinking, what's the resale value on this? And so we're part of that story.
Like many businesses, COVID has really struck some categories very hard. How has it been in the resale? I see on the one end, it would be a headwind, just as folks are buying less, consuming less potentially. But on the other ways, it could be a tailwind as people open up to very, very new ideas. How have you found it?
We found it to be super interesting, as probably everyone. I mean, that's like in a nutshell. We could have like a 3-hour conversation about it right now. But the truth is that as we benefited like direct to consumer e-commerce companies did over COVID, that we actually had that tailwind of sales. People were sitting home who normally are spending on travel and going to concerts and going to sporting events and had nothing to spend their money on. And we just were shocked because we originally, when COVID hit, we thought, oh my gosh, people are going to really buckle up. They're going to be afraid. They're going to be furloughed or out of jobs and they're going to be nervous and not spending. And we were just like bracing for this, and then all of a sudden, like our biggest non-promotional sales day of our lives happened like early April of 2020. And we're like, what is happening? And then sales continued to go on. And so we actually never had that kind of odd behavior that we weren't expecting, that I think we hear from other direct consumer brands, those types of activities. But on the other side, there were some things we had to figure out on the intake side. So our entire business relies on you boxing up your belt and your shoes and that, messenger bag you never carried and, taking some photos, uploading to our site, getting a quote, whatever, or going into one of our physical locations and getting a quote and then like shipping it into us. And we found that for many reasons that we tried to unpack, that intake was difficult for us for a couple months there. And we can only ever sell a percentage of what we get in.
Sure.
So while our conversion rate had never been higher and is still higher than it's ever been, we can only sell a percent of what we're getting in the door. So our big job, at the beginning of COVID was, how can we help this be easy for you? And what we've seen for all recommerce sites is the companies that did best during COVID when you talk about direct to consumer, the more direct from consumer you were on the supply side, the better you were able to do during COVID. If you had a bunch of physical stores that you had to, go in and drop your stuff off, or if you're used to having a white glove service where people are coming into your house, nobody was having people into their houses, and stores were all closed. And so in recommerce, you're only as good as your supply. And every recommerce seller, we're all supply constrained. We can't just go order a bunch of SKUs or manufacture this or that, or find a new vendor for this. It's like we need you to be motivated to get us your stuff, and we need to make that as easy as possible. We happen to, just as the way we've done it over time, is that 85% of our inventory comes from closets directly to us, mailed in. So we made a few changes early on, like your ability to set up a UPS pickup at your house instead of dropping it off somewhere. Those types of things we were able to turn that around fairly quickly and then get our sales back up, because our sales are a percentage of whatever inventory you have on the site.
So Sarah, just maybe quickly, I want to make sure that, number one, the consumer that might want to use your service or your competitor's service just kind of fundamentally get how it works. So maybe you can just explain that and how Neiman Marcus is involved. And then also maybe just for the strategy people, the analysts or other sort of people we have listening to the podcast, just kind of compare and contrast your model to some of the others that people might be familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's actually really interesting. So like I said, you could use our app. 85% of the inventory we get from our sellers come from you taking a picture of that backpack you never carried, and you upload it to our site, and we send you an email that says we'll give you $1,000 for that, and you say perfect, you accept the offer, and then we send you a free shipping label and you mail it to us. That's how we get 85% of our inventory. But I'm telling you, I think the relationship we have with Neiman Marcus is truly revolutionary, because there's nowhere else that I know of on the planet, actually, that you could take that same backpack, you walk into Fashion Island Neiman Marcus, you drop it off on the Fashionphile counter. Every Fashionphile location in Neiman Marcus is run by Fashionphile employees. We train them. They're not even Neiman Marcus employees. So you drop that backpack off on at the Fashionphile counter, and you go shop shoes or go, have lunch at the cafe or something. You get an alert on your phone that says you have a check waiting for you for $1,000. Or if you put that check onto a Neiman Marcus gift card, they'll give you 10% more. You now have $1,100 on a gift card, and it's burning a hole in your pocket in Neiman Marcus. So it's really a revolutionary thing that you're doing it in the same shop. You literally can buy this year's backpack with last year's backpack in the same shopping trip. I don't know anywhere else where that can happen. For Neiman Marcus, they're excited because this is a new, every department store is thinking, how can I create services that make us more relevant in this new world, that introduce our brand to a new customer? And one thing that is super interesting as we kind of evaluated our partnership is that there hasn't been as much crossover as you would think in the Fashionphile customer and the Neiman customer before our partnership. And so there's no reason why any one of our sellers shouldn't be a Neiman Marcus customer. Every single person who's selling to us is buying these luxury branded goods. We only sell 51 brands. We only sell the ultra luxury. We don't go downstream. So every single one of the brands we carry, Neiman Marcus carries. They should be their customer. So our customer tends to be a younger, more diverse, type of customer. And so the idea that we've got now potentially customers of ours that are coming into Neiman Marcus, having these interactions, or for us, that the Neiman Marcus customer who has not been our customer historically, many of them, that they're able to learn about Fashionphile and have those interactions. Another really crazy, cool, synergistic relationship is the Neiman Marcus stylists. What they do, they know how to fill a closet, but part of that filling a closet is editing the closet and saying, you never wear that backpack.
Right.
Why is it still there? And so we had a pilot for a year with 6 Neiman Marcus stylists. And during that year, we truly treated a pilot as a pilot and just learned everything we could about what was working and not working for that stylist as we built out an app to support that for this team. And we just rolled it out with 66 more just in April, 66 more stylists, because they're the experts at editing the closet. And again, so then now they sell to the Neiman Marcus, their Neiman Marcus clients, they get a commission when they make those sales. And then as they help them edit the closet, Fashionphile pays them a commission as they, edit the closet, and we pay that commission in Neiman Marcus gift card, which then the stylist helps them to spend. And it's just this really virtuous.
It's circular commerce in every respect, right?
It is. And that was the goal of Neiman Marcus. They said, we believe, this is 2019, by the way, before it was cool. Today, lots of brands are talking about participating, but it was a riskier move back then. And honestly, they said, we believe in extending the life cycle of luxury. We believe it's something our customers are already doing, just kind of in a messy way that's not very elegant or elevated, or doesn't have the ability to do what we do here at Fashionphile, and they wanted to participate. And so it's been, people said to us from the beginning, because we're bootstrapped for so long, they were like, oh, this is, honeymoon's probably going to end soon with now you have these investors. And honestly, it's the honeymoon we're still on the honeymoon. We're in Tahiti right now. We're in Tahiti.
All right.
It's going well.
Oh, that's fantastic. So just being mindful of our time, I'm curious your take on, it seems like everything I read about resale, at least broadly, is there's just going to be this mega growth. We've got several of folks that I guess aren't necessarily your direct competitors that have gone public or rumored to be going public. What help us separate the hype from the reality? And it sounds like you have been profitable, which, as we talked about earlier, not everybody can say. But what does it take to take this resale in general to the next level, and some of the challenges you have in particular?
That's a really great question. And the crazy thing is, again, we've been doing this now for 20 something years, and like 2020, obviously, because it was such a weird year, we were more profitable than ever. And we're like, oh, it's probably COVID related, because we're even more conservative on some marketing spend and all that. But then 2021, we're growing faster than we ever have, and we're more profitable than we ever have been. So it's definitely, we're experiencing some of those tailwinds you're talking about. And then we've been doing this a really long time, so we have like a, kind of solid foundation, but we are excited about the entire sector. There is just so much room for so many successful resale companies. When you look at the RealReal is really the consignor. They're America's consignment shop is what they really are. They consign everything in the house. They would take the conference room chairs that we have at Fashionphile, we bought on the RealReal. They would take this lamp, a couch. They'll take your kitchen table and chairs. They'll take your Nike gym shorts. They'll take also your Chanel flap and your Cartier love bracelet. But they're basically America's consignment shop. And ThredUp is America's thrift store. And like I said, they are a mind blow. I think they get 100,000 items in a day. Their AOV is like under, or average selling prices, I know, under $20. But they've got huge margins. And so, there's room for a lot of these companies. I think it's so great. If ThredUp can figure out how to create, America's thrift store online, like how cool is that? And I heard that Goodwill is actually wants to give them a run for their money. Goodwill.com, I think, does pretty well as well. But anyway, so I think there's a lot of room and for a lot of different categories to be successful. We specialize in the ultra luxury category. We only do accessories. So only handbags, shoes, belts, travel goods, fine jewelry, and fashion jewelry and watches. So that type of category, and only 51 brands. Every brand we accept is highly counterfeited, and sophisticated counterfeiting. And so we are very careful. Our average order value is, around $1,400. I think the RealReal's is under $400. So it's just a different type of, product mix. I think the RealReal has like 65% women's contemporary. And again, it's like I said, like I'm an average shopper of all of these sites, for all those different type of products. But at Fashionphile, we created kind of different level service. It's just, you need a different type of service level for accepting your $45,000, Rolex.
Right.
And I feel like because everything we do is that, we're able to create a better experience for the customer. What's really hard is, how do I get more of these authentic Chanel bags? Like I said, we can't order them. Chanel's never going to give them to us. And so, so for us, what's really important is just, how can we make this as frictionless, easy? How can we get you to come back with not only the backpack, that was so easy, we gave you so much for it, that you are going to go back and go through your shoes, your watches, your wallets, your belts, your luggage, whatever, and talk to your wife.
Well, Sarah, your enthusiasm is I don't even know if you say this anymore, contagious. But your enthusiasm is so contagious. I got to be careful these days. But really, your experience and your enthusiasm for the category after being in it for 20 years is really impressive. So what you've pulled together over what I'm sure wasn't always easy treading has been really impressive. And I want to thank you so much for sharing it with us on the Remarkable Retail podcast. I think we just barely scratched the surface, though. I have so many questions, but only so little time. So really, thanks so much for joining us. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot and really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, it's another episode of Remarkable or Forgettable. Steve, lots in the news today. Let's start out with ThredUp earnings. And, it's a nice theme into our show today. From the outside in, when I look at the numbers, they look pretty good. They almost look remarkable. What's your take on it, though?
Well, we had actually 3 of the resale guys report this week: ThredUp, Poshmark, and the RealReal. And they all had excellent sales growth, which is kind of remarkable given that apparel has been down so much. But the thing that is revealed in the numbers is they're all still losing a lot of money. And you would think, or I would think, with this kind of perfect storm of low customer acquisition costs and people being more digital first, that might be not necessarily as good as it's ever going to get, but it should have been pretty good. So still think we have this challenge with a lot of these pure plays in their unit economics, is figuring out how to make money. And, it's not that hard to grow top line if you're willing to spend a lot of money to buy those sales. So I'm a little interested to hear more here.
Well, what I also struck me is the size of the business. It's not that big a business. Like, there's a lot of, compared to the story of the business, these businesses aren't huge.
Yeah, I think they're, a couple $100 million a year, which is certainly nice coming from, being nothing a few years ago. Yeah, lots of people have not, myself included, have not built a business from scratch to several $100 million. Yeah. So it's nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, in the scheme of things, it's very small share of the market at this point, but absolutely growing very quickly. A lot of consumer interest, as we talked about with Sarah. So a lot more to pay attention here, but I wouldn't conclude. I think we're seeing an era of, profitless prosperity, but not remarkable overall results quite yet.
Canada Goose takes flight. The Goose's earnings, Canada Goose's earnings were pretty blockbuster. What do you think?
One of my favorite brands. I talk about them in the book. I think they're doing a lot of interesting things. They've created certainly a very remarkable brand, and they've got good growth again in an era where, or at least a time frame where high end and apparel related products have not done particularly well. They're a brand that does not have a ton of global presence yet with their own stores. So some of this is being driven by the growth in China. Some of this is being driven by more people learning about the brand. So they're in really good shape. But I thought, pretty remarkable, particularly their e-commerce growth.
The news out around Victoria's Secret. The L brands are going to spin off Victoria's Secret by August. I'm not so interested in the M&A story. I'm more interested from your perspective can what was clearly a remarkable brand. I mean, think back for a few years ago, like their runway shows were like some of the most watched television ever, but they maybe flew a little close to the sun, singed their wings. Can a brand like Victoria's Secret be remarkable again?
I think so. I don't think, certainly, and I think we touched on this in an earlier episode when it was announced they were going to be spun off. I don't think a new owner per se is automatically going to change something, but I think a fresh set of eyes on this brand, which, has tremendous brand awareness, a lot of stores. So they have a really good base to build on, but it's been a very mismanaged brand for a number of years. So I think the brand's a bit tarnished in a lot of consumers' minds, but there's a lot to work with there. So I'm more optimistic about their ability to turn themselves around than perhaps a retailer we might talk about soon, like maybe even next. I'm not sure.
Well, let's talk about JCPenney.
I was right.
Yeah, you and I have been waiting for the penny to drop, boom, boom, on that one for a long time. I had to LOL, as the kids would say when they said they were on their way to becoming a 21st century retailer. Remarkable or forgettable?
Laughable. I mean, I think, you got to become a 20th century retailer before you become a 21st century retailer.
Let's just skip that. Let's just skip that century. Let's move on to the next century.
Yeah.
Leapfrog strategy.
I mean, I guess if I were in their situation, you gotta spin things as much as you can. But, this is a business that's been in trouble for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure people are pretty aware of the very, the Ron Johnson days, and then the subsequent attempts to resurrect the brand. And they've been losing market share and relevance for a long, long time. So they have a long way to go. So as I frequently say, better is not the same as good. It's great that traffic's up a little bit and the trends are up, but that department store sector got hit. So you're only 50% off from where you were 10 years ago, as opposed to 60% off,
Well, I got to think you're cheering for him, right? Texas based. I mean, you got to have a little bit of hometown, hope for the underdog there, right?
I mean, I hate talking smack about brands, really. It's just more like, when you put out these kind of BS statements, I feel like we've got to call them on that. But no, I would love to see that brand turn around. I have a lot of friends who have worked there, some that still work there.
Great people. Yeah,
so I would be great for lots of people if Penney's were to resurrect itself, but they have a long, long way to go. And unfortunately, at this point, I would continue to not be particularly optimistic. So that statement is remarkable in its chutzpah, forgettable as a strategic statement.
Well, we can't have a remarkable or forgettable episode, it seems, without at least talking about Amazon once. And in this case, Amazon crushes it. Not their earnings, but 2 million counterfeit products last year. It seems like, one of the weak spots about running a marketplace is it can become a bit of a wild west. And I have to think, again, back to your thinking around strategy and brand, that there's risk there to erosion of trust and brand when that you have to really watch carefully as a marketplace. So it seems like this is a remarkable statement by Amazon that they're taking hold and having ownership of what goes on in their platform.
I agree, and we got into this with Sarah too, right? I mean, the ability to have if you're going to sell products or resell products, creating that trust with the consumer is absolutely key. And certainly in Amazon's case, is the marketplace part of it's been growing faster than the rest of their business, but just in general, their business is huge in scope. So there's a lot of opportunities for people who want to do ill to do that. So I applaud them for being aggressive about it. And it's just an ongoing challenge. The more you deal with third-party sellers, essentially.
Yeah, it's a bit of a whack-a-mole challenge. But anyway, all right. Well, that was a remarkable or forgettable. All right, Steve, take us home.
If you like what you heard, please follow us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast platform so you can catch up with all our guest interviews and insights, and new episodes will show up every week. And please take a minute to drop us that elusive 5-star rating and tell a friend in the retail industry. I'm Steve Dennis. The expanded and completely revised second edition of my best-selling book, Remarkable Retail: How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Disruption, is now available at Amazon Indigo, bookshop.org, or just about anywhere books are sold.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast, and you can learn more about me on LinkedIn or on meleblanc.co. Steve, have a safe week.